and some were not, and they're working out to find out where those bodies are. It's hard to believe that you even have to say something like that. It's so sad. It's so sad. But what's not sad is that we have finally, after, I guess they say 3,000 years, I've heard from 3,000 years to 500 years, but whatever it is, it's a lot. But this was the one, this was the granddaddy of them all, and frankly, I thought this was probably going to be the toughest, and maybe in many ways it was, but we had a lot of good talent. Steve Witkoff, Jared, Marco, and Pete, and General Kane was so great. John Ratcliffe was incredible. We had an amazing array of talent, and we were helped by, in particular, the countries represented at this table. I will say, Tamim, you were fantastic, and your country is unbelievable, and I don't think they give you a fair shake. They talk about you as though you're not a nice person, and you happen to be a nice person. You happen to live in a little tough neighborhood. You're surrounded by everybody. And without you, this wouldn't have happened. And I just want to thank you very much. That's Qatar. And he's an amazing leader. And another man who's been a friend of mine for a long time, I don't know what it is. I like the tough people better than I like the soft, easy ones. I don't know what the hell that is. It's a personality problem, I suspect. But this gentleman from a place called Turkey has one of the most powerful armies actually in the world. It's much more powerful than he even lets known. If you look at some of the recent conflicts, he was at the top of them, and he was winning them, and he did win them. And he doesn't want any credits. He doesn't want anything. He just wants to be left alone. He's a tough cookie, but he's been my friend. And every time I've ever needed him, he's been there for me. So I just want to thank President Erdogan, Turkey. NATO has a problem with him because he is difficult. They call me. They said, would you do me a favor? Could you speak to Erdogan? And I do, and he never fails us. Right, General? He never fails. He's amazing. So I just want to thank you for the friendship. It's great. Thank you very much. And then, of course, we have the host tonight, and I just want to thank you very much. There was a reason we chose Egypt, because you were very helpful. And very, very helpful. Everybody wanted to have this, but we really thought it was appropriate. And you are a great leader. We have very little crime. We have problems that other countries don't have. And of course, nothing's perfect, but the job you do is amazing, and I want to thank you. Another one, we've been my friend right from the beginning. During the campaign against crooked Hillary Clinton, have you heard of her? We were both downstairs waiting to go up to meet this gentleman who has a place called Egypt, the oldest civilization. They say 6,000 years. China is 5,000 years, but you're actually number one. 6,000 years, can you believe it? But the oldest, they say, civilization. But so I went up to meet him first, and we liked each other so much that she waited for about an hour and a half. And I think your meeting lasted about 2 minutes with her. So I always remembered that. But that was our first meeting. We had great chemistry together. And he's a fantastic man and a fantastic general, by the way. But he's a great, great president. And I want to thank Egypt and all of your representatives for treating us all so well. So we're really representative of a whole group of nations, and they're sitting behind us, and you know most of them. I can tell you this guy's got so much money. They all have so much money. There's more money and power sitting behind us. I love that they're behind us. We've never been sitting behind anybody before. This is a very unique position for them, but they are seriously, they're among the most powerful countries in the world, the richest countries in the world, and there's never been really an assemblage like what we have today. I don't think I've never seen it anyway. And I want to thank everybody for being with us. Man, I just solved the war for him. Azerbaijan. Oh, did I do a good job? Where did you come here? Where is there he is? You guys are still getting along, right? They fought for 32 years, and in about 1 hour we settled it, right? And they like each other now, too. That's great. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here. Italy, she's a very strong ruler. She's doing a great job. You're doing a big, thank you very much. So many, but we're actually going to be making a speech after this, so this is just a very important signing, but we're doing a signing, then we're doing a speech, and then I may stay behind with the leaders just to talk about that, some things without the press. I want to thank the media for you've been so respectful on this deal. You know the deal, and I really, it was so pleasant to watch. I was on the plane for quite a while listening to the various newscasts, and they were all fair. They were talking about how incredible this is. This is an incredible day for the world, let alone the Middle East. So I just wanted to thank the media. They really treated it with respect. I wish you could be like that on other things, but that's perhaps too much to ask for. But on this, tremendous, everybody feels the same. Just tremendous respect, and we appreciate it very much. Can we get the documents, please? Okay. Okay.
You are watching a historic moment here in Egypt at Sharm el-Sheikh, Egyptian city, as President Trump, surrounded by other world leaders, signs a ceremonial document behind a banner that says "Peace in the Middle East." This is to commemorate today's milestone moment, the release of the hostages, aid into Gaza, and the first step toward this broader peace plan that could lead in a very good direction. The president calls it a new day in the Middle East. 3,000 years, he just said, to get to this point. Also, many hours behind schedule as I bring in CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes. We are behind today, Nancy, as you travel with the president or in Sharm el-Sheikh. We are behind, but this is no less important for it. It is a big day. There is no hiding that. What stood out to you so far?
Well, the fact, Tony, that these leaders are all signing on to this document at all is interesting. Technically, they don't need to sign on to the deal. Israel and Hamas have already signed on. But it's a recognition, I think, that if this peace deal is going to survive and flourish and lead to a final end to the war, it is going to require both support and pressure from the wider world, not just regional leaders, but even some of the European leaders who have traveled here on short notice to be in that room with President Trump. Pressure because there are going to be parts of this deal that both Israel and Hamas balk at. Israel, for example, is going to push back if it's required to withdraw from Gaza entirely before Israel feels that all the milestones have been reached. Hamas, because the deal calls on Hamas fighters, if they want to stay in Gaza, to hand over their weapons, something that some Hamas members are not going to be thrilled to do. And so it is going to require pressure from the surrounding Middle Eastern neighborhood and the wider world. And it's also, frankly, going to require a lot of money, particularly from wealthy Middle Eastern countries, to rebuild Gaza and rebuild it fast enough that people can get back to some form of daily life, with a functioning economy, with schools, with some kind of police force, with a governing body. All of these things are required for life to resume in Gaza. That's the kind of fine print that has not been worked out yet. So that's what the president is discussing with these world leaders today.
Yeah, Nancy, on that point about the fine print, our partners at the BBC have been reporting that there are already clashes inside Gaza between Hamas security forces and armed clans within the Strip. We don't know what they're over exactly, but the idea of an international stabilization force, something detailed in this plan, can't come together soon enough, because without it, it's not clear who will fill that leadership vacuum there. And as we talk about who's in attendance, it's also notable who is not in attendance. Of course, Hamas not in attendance, not invited. Iran not in attendance. And also the Prime Minister of Israel. He was invited at the very last minute, we saw earlier today. And for a moment, it appeared he had accepted that invitation. But then a moment later said he could not attend because of the proximity to the Israeli holiday, which came into being here as night fell. So there's a lot of people in the room who can make a difference, and yet also some key people in the room who will not be able to sway things one way or the other, even as so many key details remain to be seen. I do have a question for you, Nancy, on the phases we keep talking about. phase one of this peace plan was the hostage release and the speeding of aid into Gaza, the ceasefire. We talk about phase two. Are we witnessing phase two right now in Egypt?
We are witnessing the leaders talk about phase two and what it would entail. You know, you mentioned, Tony, this stabilization force. Currently, that is a figment of these leaders' imaginations. This is something that is written down in a document. The fact that there is going to be an international stabilization force, essentially peacekeepers who come into Gaza to prevent things like the clashes that you were just mentioning, and to ensure that this ceasefire continues to hold. But who's going to make up that international force? How many countries will contribute troops? What kinds of troops? What missions will they perform? What roles won't they perform? All of these are questions that still need to be determined. And White House officials will tell us quite candidly, they've seen the movie before where Israel and Hamas strike a deal and there's a fragile ceasefire and then it falls apart. There's so many ways that this deal could fall apart. They are very interested in ensuring that that doesn't happen. So they want to work out the details of this stabilization force as quickly as they can.
Yeah, it is an act of profound optimism already just to allow yourself to be pictured in such a large group in front of a sign that large that says Peace 2025. We, of course, all hope for it. Joining us now is CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd. Sam, one of the really sticky points here is how you de-radicalize Hamas. How do you convince thousands of young men who have just been through a brutal 2-year war on the backs of generations of struggle to lay down their arms?
Well, Tony, every post-conflict environment is different, but having started my career in Iraq, where we candidly got disarmament wrong, and the methods that the international community used in that context actually led to more sectarian violence, it's clear that there needs to be a series of experts, not just money and not just boots on the ground, but actual experts in disarmament, putting together a plan on how to create Hamas to put their arms down, but also to create pathways for these individuals to reintegrate back into society in non-military roles. There are lessons learned from other post-conflict environments that really have to be integrated here. That is going to require economic development. That is going to require employment opportunities. A lot of these individuals worked solely for the military arm of Hamas and are now going to need some other thing to do every day. So disarmament is going to be incredibly complex. And back to Nancy's point, Tony, under the best case scenario, even with both parties, Hamas and Israel, committed to this process, there's likely going to be a very winding road to achieving the goals of this peace plan. Arab nations estimated back in February, I believe, that over $53 billion was needed for reconstruction in Gaza. And then we turn to the actual governance of Gaza itself. Hamas is, according to the peace plan, not going to be in charge. The Palestinian Authority is not really up to the task. So many unanswered questions, despite recognizing the enormity and the significance of today.
Yeah, Sam, and this is going to take time. It could even take more time than is left in the term of a presidential term in 4 years. It could be an 8, a 12, an even longer term campaign. I've heard estimates that go even beyond that. But it is a start. And so while we talk about complexity, we want to leave our viewers here with images of the success of today, the emotional reunions just hours before here in Israel. It's a time of joy, long in the making here for both Israelis and across the border Palestinians, as well as they hope for a better future. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news, and of course tonight on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News special report. I'm Tony DeCopel in Jerusalem.
All right, right, you were just listening to a CBS News special report there as President Trump attended a peace deal signing ceremony in Egypt. Of course, today, a momentous day in the Middle East as those living hostages that were held in Gaza were finally released to their families. Right now, I want to bring in CBS News Middle East reporter Courtney Keeley. Courtney, good to see you again, and thank you for joining us one more time today on 24/7. I want you to walk us through what we just heard there from the president, and also there's this bigger question of whether or not this peace agreement will actually hold.
Right. Some people don't even want to call it a peace agreement. They're still saying it's just a ceasefire. But what we saw today is what he said it was, a new day in the Middle East, which started with those living Israeli hostages being released to their families and friends. And we're seeing those reunions, something that he said is a dream that has now become a reality. And those steps need to be taken step by step, people by people. And what he's also doing is he's not just talking to the Israeli public or the Palestinian public. He's now in Egypt talking to the Europeans, the Arabs, and the Muslim world. This has been so key and critical to the success so far of even getting to where we are today, getting the Turks on board, the Qataris, the Saudis. And he pays his respects and he mentions all of these different countries that he wants to see not only live in peace, but also to sign on to the Abraham Accords once they get past this, what happens to Gaza, the critical rebuilding of Gaza first, the de-arming, the demilitarization, the de-radicalization of Gaza, the international security forces that will go and be on the ground there, the regional beefing up of CENTCOM, U.S. Army officials, the already numerous Palestinian police that are being trained. So many of things are moving parts and going into effect today, but it was really President Trump's victory lap, and he was really delighted. He even said at one point today, off script, the hostages are back, and then he said, it's so nice to say that. And I've got to say, Mugo, it's really nice to say that. There's so much left, so much just grief, destruction, anguish, all of that, even for the families that are still waiting for their deceased family members to be returned, and that might require an international security force to really search for them in the rubble in Gaza, as Palestinians do the same for their loved ones as the humanitarian trucks start rolling in.
And Courtney, I know that this is really all just beginning. There's still a lot of questions to be answered as to who will govern over there in the Gaza area, especially whether or not Hamas is actually willing to lay down their arms. But I have to ask, we heard from Tony DeCopel there saying there's already some issues in the region when it comes to Hamas and also some locals there. What are the chances, from your experience, what are the chances you think that this will actually hold, that we won't see more fighting in the region?
Well, the one thing I've always learned is never predict the unpredictable in the Middle East, including peace. However, I can tell you that some of those skirmishes and killings that have been reported coming out of southern Gaza are with a clan. So these are clan fights. The Hamas members are not answering to one of these death doomsday cult leaders like a Yahya Sinwar, who is far gone and taken out last fall. They're answering to the street and the basic breakdown of rule of law with guns in their hands. So who comes in has to reestablish the rule of law. Those aid trucks need to set up their aid and deliver it to the people. And those young men who are paying tithes or allegiances to Hamas must be told very quickly that Hamas really no longer exists, maybe in this ideology of an Al-Qaeda or an ISIS, but not on the ground, nor is it expected to, with all of these Arab and Muslim leaders taking their place alongside President Trump to see what they can do starting now.
All right, Courtney Keeley, as always, thank you so much for your time. And that is my time for today right here on CBS News 24/7. But Reed Cowan is here to take over.
Front row seat to history today.
Yeah,
We're
definitely
watching it being written in real time. Thank you, Mugo. So CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer picks it up from here. She's live in London. So the big question, I think, for so many people on all sides of this war are, what are the chances that President Trump's 20-point plan succeeds?
Oh, boy, that... we have to read a lot of complicated tea leaves, and I wouldn't bet money either way. It's clear that there are huge obstacles. For example, the hostage handover isn't complete. The dead hostages have not been given back to the Israelis yet, and it's not quite clear when and how that's going to happen. The ceasefire could break down. This thing could stop before it gets started. All sorts of things can spark a new round of violence that all parties may not necessarily want, but once it starts, it can spread like wildfire. Don't forget that the Israeli army is still in occupation of more than 50% of the Gaza Strip. And then, of course, maybe the thorniest question is who's going to govern Gaza? Not politically, that's been spelled out and probably easier to see, but the actual boots on the ground, if you like. Now, we know that some Arab countries theoretically are going to offer forces. Turkey, Indonesia has said it's willing, but we just don't know how they're going to be commanded. The Arabs have some reservations because they don't want to be seen to be doing Israel's bidding in this project. Israel, for its part, has never let an armed Muslim force onto its territory. So it's complicated. And in the meantime, you know, in Gaza, if Hamas is really going to be reined in, there could be a power vacuum, and that could descend into anarchy. So we're at a very, very difficult and dangerous stage. There is euphoria today in Egypt and Israel, but really the hard part is just starting. Reid?
As Tony DeCopel put it so well just a moment ago in our CBS News special report, at least it's a start. Elizabeth Palmer in London, thank you so much. We're also watching breaking news that happened this morning. At least 2 people killed after a plane crashed onto a major interstate in Massachusetts. What we know about the fate of the victims and many more headlines coming out of the world today as history is written with the release of hostages. Much more ahead on CBS News 24/7.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America.